Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining. We're going to go ahead and get started with this last panel for today's sessions. So welcome everybody. In this closing panel, we're going to be talking about building at scale. I'm super excited to have Adrian and Jennifer from IBEW and Adam and Brienne from RWDSU joining us today. All of them sit on our cooperative development panel. So a quick recap. You might not know this, but Action Network, our sister toolset, and Action Builder, which we're talking about today and tomorrow, are both built using a never-for-profit cooperative development model. We very much believe that all of the tools we build should be about serving the movement and not about making a bunch of profit for investors or other people or trying to profit from this movement's work. Instead, this is all about building power and building a movement that can be successful in creating the future that we all need. So in this panel, what we're going to be talking about is I'm going to kick it to each of our panelists to talk about sort of a little bit about what they were doing before Action Builder, their involvement in the cooperative development process, and then highlighting a different feature in the tool set that has proven to be valuable on their campaigns. So in this session, they'll actually be sharing their screens and walking you through some different features in the tool set. And I just want to say again that our cooperative development process, we take that super seriously. We don't take ourselves seriously, but we take that sharing of ideas, making sure that the tool is informed by and built by the organizers who sit around our cooperative development table. We take that really seriously. And we think that that really shows in the tool that we've built. My job is to facilitate those meetings. But really what we end up building and how we end up building it has been determined by Adrian, Jennifer, Adam, Brienne, and about 20, 25 other folks who come to those table meetings on a monthly basis. And then on a quarterly basis, we actually really dig in and prioritize what we're going to build. Something that we like to say is we can build anything, right? Software is so flexible. We can build any technology we want. It's all about time allocation. What are we going to say is actually the priority for what we build next? And that, I'm happy to say, is determined by organizers, by folks in the field saying, this is what we need, this is what's going to be most impactful for us. And the people who are saying that around the table are the folks that are joining me today on this panel. So I'm going to kick it over to Adrian to go first, and really appreciate everyone joining us today for this presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Appreciate all of you being here. I know with our organizer's schedule, we are busy, always doing something. So thanks for trying to learn something new and what we're trying to do here to make organizing easier. So for those of you that were on the call earlier, Adrian from IBEW, I handle the construction side of the organizing. My toolie, Jennifer, is P&I. That's anything outside of construction, anything non-construction. So we use a tool on a daily basis. We're using it for the same goal. She uses it a little bit different than what my crew uses it for. Our crew they've taken it and ran with it. And I'm supposed to highlight one feature, and I'm going to highlight one feature, and I'm going to share my screen. There's so many features that we use on a daily basis that we love, so it was hard to nail down one. But I'm going to show you one really cool feature I talked about earlier about the Geo Code using your location. So when we're tracking job sites, we're tracking, and this can be construction or non-construction, work sites, job sites, where our targets are. What we used to do, and what I used to do as an organizer in Houston, I would have my notepad and I drive around, and there I am. I see a non-union job site. I see workers on the job site. I pull over to it. I take my notepad out and I'm writing notes down, right? And some of us probably still do this. I would write down notes. It's on the intersection of, Tidwell and Interstate 45 or whatever. And I would try to estimate how big the job was. If I ran into some electricians on the job, who the contractor was, who the GC was. But the point is I had my notepad, or I had something there to keep track of it. Of course, now this is all done with our phone through Action Builder. If I was doing top downs, I'd have my folder with my information of my contractor name, how many employees this contractor had, how many jobs this contractor had, type of work he was doing, stuff like that. Same thing with house calling electricians. We know how Houston's the 4th largest city in the country, so it's very spread out, and sometimes Google Maps or whatever wasn't quite exactly right. You know, this address was here, and Google was telling me here, but it's actually down the road or across the street or something. And we find that a lot with new areas too. Well, the GPS location on your phone really helps out pinpoint job sites and locations like that. So let me share my screen real quick and show you how we like using it. And so this is, like we talked about earlier, this is our practice. We encourage all of our new users to go in and say, so you won't mess up your own local union list of electricians or targets or contractors. Go into Chicago Comcast and start messing around with it, adding people, adding information, pinning job sites, stuff like that. So once they use it, they just, it takes off on its own. Action Builder really speaks for itself. So I'm going to act like I'm in the field. I'm driving around as an organizer does, and I still do this now. I do this now. If I'm at a gas station and I see an electrician driving a van or something, or some tree trimmers driving a big bucket truck, I walk up to them, I introduce myself. I'm not a local organizer anymore, but I still give them the information for the locals around here. And I can add that information to Action Builder and they can see it. But this is how I would do it in the field if I were tracking a non-union job site, for example. I would pull over to it, I would click Add New. And the only thing I have to do is tell Action Builder, are you creating a person with the different entities we have in Action Builder now that the Action Builder team created for us? Person, job sites, and contractors is what we use. So I'm going to add a new job site. So I would just switch this to job site. And then I give it a name, and I would say non-union, you know, low road contractor. See, somebody's already added that already. I'll just put low road contractor. And if you have the address, great. But a lot of times you don't have access to a job. A lot of times you see it's just a big permitting on the outside of the fence, and it has a parcel number. Or a lot of times you're just busy and you can't walk the job. You can't find out the address. Well, at least give it a state. So in this case, I'm in DC, so I'm just going to put DC. And I create the job site. So now it takes me to the profile page. I just recorded this job site just like I was writing in a notepad on my big yellow tablet or whatever. I just recorded this job site. So now I want to update the address to where it's going to drop me the location where I'm at right there. So I go here to addresses, to the address, and I click edit Geo Code. So the Geo Code, for most of you know, latitude, longitude is the actual Geo Code that Google or Bing Maps or whatever mapping system uses, is a Geo Code. Well, we don't know those big long numbers, but guess what does know those fancy numbers? This thing right here that we're on using to record this information. So I'll just click use my location. It populates it for me. I click save. I have just added a pin for that job site, and I'm going to show you right now that that pin is actually in on my map view in my wall chart, and I can go back to it at a later date, go back to my office, try to pull a permit for that job site, investigate it, see who's doing it, what it is actually, and all sorts of information. If I wanted to add info, I can. If I wanted to add some info, like I did a job visit check-in, I met with some workers, I see the trailer is Berg Electric, I can add the contractor is Berg Electric, I can add who the GC is, stuff like that. All this information I add on the fly, it's there, and it's no kind of entering into a database, it's already there. From my handwritten notes into a database, it's there. So if I go to the wall chart and I go to job sites, I switch from the people version and go to job sites. It's my list of job sites. And you see people are creating, like I said, we encourage our people to go in here and create stuff. So this is like fake job site, stuff like that. But if I look at the map view, we can go to the map view and start seeing where people are practicing entering their job sites. And you see it's kind of all over, people practicing stuff. And I can zoom in here. And there's the job site I just added. That's another one that I see there's two. It looks like I've added one before here. So there's two there, right? So there's my non-union low road contractor. It happens to be at the IBEW building. There's a low road contractor working here. But you see how easy it is to keep track of job sites, to keep track of work sites, to keep track of employers and whatever. And I can go through and add all that information in my phone, sitting in my car, sitting in my truck, never even walking the job because I'm on my way to a meeting or somewhere. But I do want to keep track of that job site or target. So within 1 minute, I've kept track of it, dropped a pin, and there you go. I have just added it. And our electricians, our linemen, our organizers in the field, they love that feature. They love being able to have stuff on the fly as they see it in real time. So with that, I don't want to take up too much more time. I'll hand it off to my tool buddy, Jennifer.
All right, thank you, Adrian. Like Adrian mentioned, he supports the construction side of the house and I'm professional industrial organizing, but we definitely look to each other for best practices, which has been really cool, as he finds great little gems that work well in construction. Sometimes I could steal them and find out a good way for them to work for us as well on our side. But just a little bit about the collaborative development process. It isn't just Adrian and I that represent, at least from the IBEW side. We do get all that feedback from our organizers in the field, and we bring that to the table in these meetings. So it is made by organizers for organizers. We have a bi-weekly phone call that takes place on the P&I side of the house with our regional organizing coordinators, and I'm constantly looking for feedback and improvements on what they want to see within Action Builder. And we ask, for those folks to ask that of the local union organizers. So constantly looking for new ways and, having all the affiliate unions be a part of it has been wonderful because, what maybe we didn't find was something we needed or we didn't think initially, someone else fought for it and we got it, and it's like helpful to everyone. So it's such a great process. I'm actually going to talk and show you a little bit more about the task creating options for Action Builder. So creating assignments for any kind of volunteer organizing committee members you may have, local union staff that may be assisting with any kind of assignments on a campaign, internal, external, whatever it may be. This is where you're going to go to create an assignment, a personalized assignment for somebody. So when we kind of first started talking about tasks, and assignments as the committee, and it rolled out, like we actually didn't have, the Google mapping feature. So that was something that came across from the committee. Even the size of the map was something that was discussed as a committee because we found it was kind of hard to zoom in, like really close in a tight little neighborhood that you might have been targeting. So, something like that, the Action Builder team has been able to implement and make better for us. So we're super excited about things like that. But I just want to kind of show you like how simple and easy it is to create a task. And I'm just going to go ahead and name it, let's see, July 29. Your due date is flexible. You can choose any date that you want. Just because it expires doesn't mean it goes away. It's still in the system. You can choose to hide it or not hide it. But we'll just go with today's date. And this description is an optional piece, but this is something that folks will see when they go to pull out, their task or assignment. So this case, let's try to get them excited. Let's knock doors. COVID distance accordingly as well. Okay, so here we have our blitz, July 29. this is your list of to-dos. So this is anything that you want them to capture, you want them to ask of the person that they're going to be visiting. So maybe you want them to ask for somebody's email address. Maybe you want phone numbers because you want to start having them opt into some group mass messaging, you know, whatever it is. But in this case, I'm going to say we're asking for assessments. We want to get ratings for these folks. So that is what you're going to put in your to-dos. Again, you can put multiple if you choose to, but for this exercise, I'll just put one. You can create your query or your universe by different ways. So you can decide you want to carve it out based on some type of tag that you might have used to identify these workers. Maybe it's a classification, maybe it's a department, maybe it's a specific issue, maybe it's a wage rate, like whatever you want to do. But for this case, we're just going to add everybody into our universe. And then for the create turf, this is where I'm going to go to actually make assignments for any kind of volunteers that I have. And in this case, we're going to map it and do a geographic area. So you can see these little pins again with our demo. We have people adding records, you know, all over the place. And let's go to Minnesota. So super easy. You just hit draw. And then you just kind of outline your turf here. I'm going to apply. And this is where you get a list of your folks. So that's everybody in that geographic area that's essentially showing up. You'll see 0, 1 of to-dos. And that is, again, we're gathering an assessment. So it automatically defaults with a name of turf 1. If you do 5 turfs, turf 2, turf 3, turf 4, turf 5, and then you can rename them, which was another enhancement that we came out with across the committee. And if I want to assign this turf to a volunteer, I'm going to go ahead and give it to Adrian in this example. And now you can see it's been assigned to him, turf 1. So if I go back, I'll actually refresh real quick. If I can. There we go. Then I'm going to, it's kind of hard to refresh because of my screen sharing I have going on. But essentially I would refresh and you would see that turf showing up again with Adrian, and this would take me to turf 2. So if I wanted to search for a particular individual, again, maybe you have relationships with your volunteer organizing committee members, and you don't want to cut it on something so basic like a geographic, you know, mapped area. You don't want to just carve out by a particular issue or a particular tag, but you know, you want to do the name by name game, right? Because anytime we do an organizing effort, that's usually the first place we would start. Who do you have a relationship? Who are you going to talk to? You get those folks to name those names. So now you have the ability to go ahead and just add folks by individual name to a turf and create an assignment that way. I'm just going to add a couple. So there I have my 2 targets now. And then I can assign this turf. We'll give it to Al Fortier. And then you have a turf, simple as that. So again, in terms of other enhancements, collaborative development process, when this first rolled out, you couldn't like pre-make your turf or pre-assign your turf or duplicate turf, because a lot of times, you know, in the paper world, you'd give a folder, someone would hit one side of the street, someone would hit the other side of the street, and they would get a packet and a turf assignment done. So when we kind of had discussions about creating these assignments, we needed to be able to duplicate that same type of work with an action builder, and we can do that today. So we can create duplicate turfs, and you know, me and Adrian can go out and knock doors and work together as a team. So just another cool piece, you know, for for the task and creation of assignments that I wanted to share with everybody. And that's really all I have today on the turf cutting feature.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Adrian. We do have one question coming in from the crowd. Can you assign a person to an organizer permanently? So you can apply a field to a response to a person and then grant access based on that response. Jennifer, Adrian, is that something that you all do at IBEW very much?
I haven't done a person, an individual, but I have, in some locals, they have more than one organizer, and a lot of locals, they have more than one organizer. And in one local in particular, they said it's in different quadrants. So I assigned a set of contractors. Everything above here and here is assigned to Joe Smith, and everything over here is assigned to Alan. And so I actually permanently assigned those contractors to the organizer who is in charge of that jurisdiction.
Awesome. Very cool. We're gonna keep on heading on, but feel free to keep dropping questions to the Q&A and to the chat. We'll save some time for Q&A at the end as well. And if you really want to dig into some of these other questions, other features, that is tomorrow. So we're going to be really digging into walkthroughs of the tool tomorrow as well. So I'm going to pass it on to Adam and Brienne from RWDSU to talk about their usage of Action Builder.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Martha. So that was really helpful. The task feature is phenomenal. And so just to uplift how everyone should learn that. And thanks for doing that presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about a campaign specifically that we did and how we applied Action Builder to it, because we started this campaign before we implemented Action Builder. And then as we were using multiple charts and multiple Google spreadsheets and Excel spreadsheets, we learned that Action Builder would be incredibly useful. And so we dumped all the data into Action Builder when we got a little bit before, but also once we got the voter list, cleaned it up. And then that's how we moved forward to run this campaign. So I'd say before, Action Builder, because I think that's the part of this, trying to capture the before and after. Before, we would have charts. We'd put up tons of charts on the wall. Literally, you go to my office and it had as every organizer knows, and we do little stickies where you peel off assignments, and you would, everybody knows that. You'd have the little color-coded stickers, and visually it works. It's not as ideal as it could be, but it works. And so we also would do tons of different Google documents like spreadsheets or Excel spreadsheets. But the problem with that is you end up getting multiple spreadsheets. You get a spreadsheet for turnout for an event. You get a spreadsheet for a political event that you want members to attend, or you get a spreadsheet for this and that. And the next thing you know, you're trying to find the last spreadsheet. Especially if you have a team of 6. So I'm going to talk about Housing Works, the campaign that we did, about 605 workers at the time, and about 30 locations. And so this was a very complex, complicated campaign. And you can imagine we had spreadsheets for locations. We had spreadsheets for industry. They're also very diverse in industry. They do healthcare oriented stuff. They do harm reduction. They have thrift stores. So there's a whole retail component. They have a warehouse. And so we were organizing from wall to wall. And we wanted to figure out the best way to do this through Action Builder, because it was a nightmare before. And I just want to show this just for humor. There's always time for some humor, I think. And so I'm going to share my screen just to show you. I mean, this was I blocked out people's names, but this is how complex the document was we were using. This is one location. And as you can see at the bottom here, all these locations we have. Another location here, but there's so many locations. And we had it all spread out all the way up to Harlem Supportive Housing here. But in addition, we would, we would have our layoff, workers that were laid off, unknown locations that we've compiled with other lists. And so what we wanted to do was figure out how we centralize all of that. And I will say another thing too, is that it's very important that as you start dealing with the kinks a little bit, that you commit to Action Builder, and every organizer commits. because organizers will start keeping a side notepad and then not put everything in Action Builder and then use that to say, well, I don't think Action Builder works that well. Well, you have to get to the backbone of what you want the data to look like. And then once you have a strong, firm core, then you can easily update to add and capture things throughout the campaign that you want to capture, which I'll talk about in a little bit later. So I know, Brienne, you're going to talk about some stuff, and then I'll finish us off.
Great, thanks, Adam. Yeah, I was just going to speak a little bit more to that transition period. And so as Adam said, this campaign really started in 2018 and picked up in 2019. And balancing all these spreadsheets and organizers' notebooks was just becoming too much of a hassle with all these complex locations, very big workforce. So when we heard about this project, we jumped at the chance to try it out, and we started working with Liz Riley at the AFL, as well as Martha, to piece together a mock instance, and then eventually created the actual campaign in October of 2019. We thought that was going to be the latter end of our organizing drive, but little did we know COVID-19 was right around the corner, and we would actually be organizing for more than a year and 2 canceled elections before workers finally did vote for the union at the end of 2020. So to speak on that transition a little bit, as Adam was saying, it took time to get that full commitment from organizers. And I think what they needed to see was the value of using Action Builder over the existing system. That patchwork of whiteboards and Salesforce, it wasn't broken, it just was really inefficient and a total nightmare to try to run or admin. So I think what was really cool and interesting to us about Action Builder was that we could prefigure the campaign that we wanted to have. We had to have a game plan. We had to imagine, what information are we going to need in the future so that we can collect it now and help us move forward as we're building this campaign. And you have to kind of figure out in advance what kind of information is going to be important to you to log. And so a big part of that for us was setting up a really detailed ladder of engagement so that we could track how our conversation is going with workers. How are we matching up with what we're seeing on the ground, and how are we putting that into Action Builder? For us, job data had to be super structured with such a complex organization with so many locations. We had to be able to see which locations were strongest and where we needed to be directing more sources. And we also had to be able to keep the back end clean. We didn't want the problem that we had with the Excel files where we're, adding a column here, subtracting something somewhere else. And what we had to learn really early on in Action Builder is that you have to keep your fields locked so that you keep everything as clean as possible. And if we didn't work through how organizers could easily capture this information, it would just be too intimidating for them to use. And of course, you can't predict everything that's going to come down the pike. So the advantage of Action Builder was that these fields could be responsive to the needs of the campaign in real time. So when COVID hit and Housing Works furloughed significant numbers of workers, we could quickly create job responses to make sure that Action Builder matched the reality that workers were living on the ground. And so that once we had that core campaign set up, we could easily adjust it and then duplicate it as we started to grow our use of Action Builder in other campaigns. Because as Adrian said earlier, once we started using it, it took off throughout our organizing department. And then what's also really helped is something that Jennifer and Adrian also both pointed to, which is that when I got admin training, it took a huge load off of Adam, and it gave us both somebody to sort of break through the questions and bounce ideas off of each other, and also helped break down a bit of a silo between research and organizing. And it helps that as a researcher, I have a lot of that experience of sifting through really dense worksheets and cleaning up data so that we could kind of count on one another to shift work from one person to the other at the various campaign flashpoints. If Adam's negotiating, for Housing Works, I can take some of that load for the Amazon campaign. Sometimes though, it just gave us 2 bottlenecks instead of 1. So I'm going to hand it back to Adam. He's going to live demo one of the most important features to us, which is the chart view. It allows us to break down in detail the strength of our campaign based on job site or department or any other field. So Adam, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Cool. And it also speaks to the value, if you're going to do this, of having a good relationship with your research department, because they can see everything. Anyway, so as far as the feature I'm going to show, so I'm going to share my screen now. It's again for the Housing Works campaign. And I'll just talk through it here. So this is just the chart view of the campaign. One caveat here is that clearly we're in a contract fight right now. So we have new workers are considered, just unassessed at this point, right? And so I'm just going to filter through 1s through 5s just to give a picture of when the vote happened, what the numbers looked like. Won't be 100% accurate because obviously some workers have turned over since the election results, but for the purposes of this, it will make sense. So here you have what I would want to see with percentages and everything else on a chart view of what we were looking like for the vote. Now we rate very hard. So unless a worker says that they support the union and attends a committee meeting, a broad meeting in addition, they're not a 2, they're a 3, because we have to assume that they're going to vote no matter what they say. Actions speak louder than words, right? Which we all know as organizers, but just to note too that the numbers here look actually a little bit better when you consider the hard ratings that we were doing. And so one of the things that are so cool now there's 30 locations at Housing Works. So one of the things that's so cool on this chart feature is really breaking it down. You have flexibility to break it down however you like, which is super important. So for here, what I wanted to show was just the field for job site. And so here, whoops, that's because I did it wrong. So if you look for the field, if you filter for the field and you filter for job site, you'll see that I've now got a breakdown of the support for each job site at Housing Works. This is really important because as someone supervising a team of organizers in a campaign, I can look and say, okay, here we go. Downtown Brooklyn, we're looking decent. We're looking decent at Bailey House, but the COVID isolation hotel is looking decent, but we really need to figure out what's going on in Midtown. There's too many non-committal workers here. Even if they're telling their coworkers that they support the union, I can't move them to a 2 because they have not attended any meetings, even site meetings. So what we would do all the time, and this you could do on your phone. So an organizer, let's just say you have a meeting where you're going to meet workers across the street for lunch at Midtown, because that's where we're weak. You can click this on your phone or you can print it out, and I'll explain that. But organizers would regularly click on the 3s and then in meetings can go over the 3s with that group at that location and say, we're still a little unsure about these workers because we haven't met with them yet. So that's just one thing I wanted to say. Now you could either take this and you could print it out. So one thing you could do, and this is a little, outside the box here, but what organizers were doing is they would highlight it all, copy it, paste it into a Word document, and then just run with that sheet because some folks may not want to have it on their phone, which is fine too. You could do either, but you can really get into pulling up a list of undecided workers in real time. So if I'm at Midtown and I get reached out to a worker that's in the Lower East Side at Crosby, I can literally just go right from Midtown instead of stopping in the office or looking at any of these charts and documents. I could just go right to Crosby and I'd have my list right in front of me of workers that are undecided that I need to meet and I need to reach to. So it's super convenient, especially with complicated units. As you can see, there's tons of thrift shops and stuff with not that many workers. And it's really helpful to see where we're strong, where we're weak. And it gives you a big picture of the campaign. You could filter this to department. I'm not going to show that, but we did that often. So if I'm the point for downtown Brooklyn right here, I may want to know who are these people that are undecided and what departments do they come from. You have this right here. I won't show it because I'm going to show one other thing, but you could just choose to filter then by the department. There you go. You now know what departments you're weak in. These may be people all in one department. Well, obviously we don't have any leaders in that department. How do we figure that out? Who knows who? And then the organizer kicks in. So, I think that you all understand that, and it's pretty cool overall. So now what I wanted to show is one thing we do, and I'm talking real fast. It's always how I do it because I know we got a lot to go through and I'm sure you'll have questions. But one thing we always do in campaigns is you can be a 2 all you want. You can support the union, but it's not until you tell an organizer that you are voting for the union right as the ballots are going out that we're going to assess that you're actually voting for the union. Just because you came to a meeting 3 or 4 weeks before the union election and ballots went out does not mean that you're supporting the union. So we wanted to capture that nuance. In addition, with an active committee, we also wanted to have the committee, we want to record when they hear from workers that they're going to vote yes. Now, that doesn't mean the worker's going to vote yes. And in my opinion, we like to have the commitment level of them talking to an organizer and vocalizing their plan to vote yes, because it's mail ballot election and all of that. And so we added this field. And what I say is we added this field in the middle of the campaign. Super convenient, right? We added the vote assessment field. We were delayed twice during the labor board in this over a 9-month period of time because of anti-union tactics, right? And pushback against the employer due to COVID, which were successful under a Trump board in DC. So anyway, vote assessment. So here we have the vote assessment. We recorded yes votes that organizers recorded, meaning they heard from the worker themselves personally that they are supporting the union, although we still were a little unsure of some of them. You know, as you see, there's still a couple threes because we're rating hard. This yes worker was so important because this is our soft yeses is 281 plus 95, so about whatever that is, math, whatever. But our hard yeses are 281, and that's important, right? And so then you look at the no's we recorded, again, rating very hard, 61, and then none, which we all know, 76 no's to add to the list. Because if I want to assess whether we're gonna win the campaign, all of the unassessed, at least vote assessment that we have not received are no's in our opinion. And so anyway, this is what I thought was interesting to show. Why is it interesting to show? Well, you'll notice one thing. You know, you could see inconsistencies, especially if you're supervising a campaign, to say, well, there's a lot of yes votes, there's a lot of threes in that. Maybe they're rating hard, right? You can see that. If there is a lot of no recorded yes assessments, I mean, that's a problem leading into the election. Or if you have a ton more worker yes assessments, but not many organizer yes assessments, you're probably relying too much on your committee to a degree. So that's something to think about, how those dynamics would play out and how they'd look. The other thing that I'd say here is, as you can see the numbers here, 281 and 95, which comes to, I think it's 388 or 378. Now, if you, 376, doesn't matter. The point is that what we were hearing from a lot of people when I was talking about mail ballot elections is that the average turnout for mail ballot elections, even with the workers that tell you they're voting, tends to be about half. I mean, that's what we were dealing with. Now, things have changed since the pandemic has become a reality and mail ballots were happening much more frequently. That's changed, but mail ballot elections we're typically seeing, 25, 30% turnout rates. So what we then, I asked a number of organizers that ran mail ballot campaigns at the time, what is the percentage of workers that turn out to vote that say they're going to for a mail ballot election? Very different, right? And I was getting about 50%, right? About 50%, maybe 50, 60%, depending. That's what I was hearing. So we extrapolated that and did it. And based on our action builder with 378 or so workers that we assessed as a soft yeses, and we ended up getting 185 votes yes for the union, only 25 no, which was good. But also, it was almost exactly half. I mean, so our numbers were right in line, and it was very helpful to be able to capture all of that in Action Builder. And I say that because the nuances are important. You can really filter in to exactly what you're trying to capture. And that's why Action Builder is far superior to the other programs that I've used, because of the amount of control that you have. And we're done, I think. Right, Brienne? Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Adam and Brienne. That was awesome. I just love hearing about these campaigns. It's so great to hear more in depth about that Housing Works campaign. Super exciting stuff. If you do have questions, please drop them in the chat, drop them in the Q&A, and we're going to start to go through those now. We have a question from Anna asking about how do you structure campaigns in Action Builder? And I think that this is a great one for all of us to answer. So, Jennifer, maybe you want to start, and then we can talk about the structuring on the external side.
Well, we have like some different campaign templates that we have created actually with the help of the Action Builder team when we were first launching and getting established. So, on my side for P&I, we have an internal and an external template where basically we have some common tags that are used within those campaigns. But it's really, that's kind of like a default. So it also depends on what type of information, the local union is providing in their Excel sheets, what type of information they have gathered about these particular workers and what type of information they do plan to gather. But what's great is now, like, another enhancement that's been made within the program is the ability for the organizer to, like, turn off and on responses that really apply to their campaign, and create responses that only apply to their campaign. But that's essentially how, we're structuring campaigns for lists, is kind of based off these little templates that we've created. So they're already within the list of campaigns, and it's super easy to, like, duplicate it and then rename it to something else. And that's how we do things at IBEW.
Awesome. Adam, Brienne, anything to add there?
Brienne, you want to, I mean, you set up a lot of these.
Sure. So, and I'm not sure if your question was specifically about the Housing Works campaign, which I didn't structure, but yeah, I think that what we really took a lot from was building out that ladder of engagement. For us, that's our biggest section. We've got turnout attempts, turnout responses. We've got basically, like, every way you could possibly try to contact a worker and track their engagement in the campaign. We try to keep that as active as possible in the worker's profile so that we can see, if this person's rated a 2, why are they actually rated a 2? Are they, showing up to meetings? What's the basis of our rating for these workers? So that way we can actually keep on top of how the campaign is truly going. And it's not just based on notes that somebody took in their notebook somewhere.
Love that. Love that. A great question from Taylor. So Adam, you mentioned the problem of organizers keeping that side notepad external from Action Builder. Taylor would love to hear any tips for driving adoption and getting folks to skip their spreadsheets, skip those notepads, really open up Action Builder, use it. Any tips or thoughts on that?
That's a tough one. It really depends on your team. It depends on how people relate to technology. It depends on a lot of factors, but I think the best thing for me was, like, showing them what's possible. So, like, showing them that you can filter with charts, even if they don't understand how to do it yet. If I could show, like, I can filter for, thinking of stuff even for the Amazon campaign, if I can filter for workers that are no longer employed, but that were vote assessed as no, but that now support the union. Well, that's interesting to, like, filter for something so specific. How would you do that in a spreadsheet? Control F, you know what I'm saying? Like, so when you show people, like, this is the stuff that we capture and how important it is, I think they actually have to be bought in to believing that it's going to make their life easier as opposed to harder. A lot of folks would be like, well, God, this is just going to be harder now. I got to update it in this, and I still want to make my paper notes, and I can't believe that we're focused on this nonsense, and whatever, right? But then when you see it, house visits, when you see how much time it saves, when you're going to cut turf on a house visit and create packs, the person that was creating those packs is going to love it, because then they don't have to do it. And so I think my biggest recommendation would be to showing some type of demo that they see that if they actually stick through it, it will make their life easier, and it will make the work easier to assess. The other hiccup is that if there are organizers that don't like when the director and or person knows exactly where the numbers are, that's just something you have to work through, because some people are like that. And to be honest, we got to know the reality of the ground, right? So that's a whole other element.
And I would just add to that, showing them the ability to filter the data 100%, but then also, like, setting up the saved queries for them. So then, boom, they could just go in and, like, see quick and dirty what they need to normally look at, on a weekly basis or whatever it might be. So they don't have to, go around and, like, manipulate their 1s and their 2s of this department or this classification, or they're unassessed. So setting them up with that, I think, has also been super helpful.
Love that. We get a great question from the Q&A as well, asking if there are a few different collections of field templates available for reference. If you are part of an AFL affiliate, you can reach out to actionbuilder@aflcio.org. And Liz Riley, who Brienne referenced, does the amazing work of supporting AFL affiliates in their onboarding of the tool and has a great sort of collection of templates to use. If you're not affiliated with the AFL-CIO, email support@actionbuilder.org, and we can refer you to some templates as well. Great question in the chat from Carl. We're getting a lot of thanks, appreciation, some amens in the chat. I really appreciate that. Feel free to drop more questions in the chat, more questions in the Q&A. I'll go ahead and ask a question. So you talked about hard assessments, Adam. Something that a lot of people have struggled with in terms of like wrapping their heads around how to use Action Builder is A, how to set up an assessment scale, but then B, how to communicate out what that assessment scale should be to organizers on the ground and then to worker leaders. Do you have any tips for how to communicate around the assessment scales and how to communicate why that assessment scale is important?
Yeah, I'll just say too, so the assessment and the way, just to break down how we typically will do it. And, you know, people have different ways they assess. Like, I feel like there's only one way to assess and every organizer would say that. So it's kind of tough, but how I would say it is like speaking even housing works, ones are your core committee. You know, those are folks that are, you know, that are showing up to every meeting, that are doing work, that are putting in work, that are actually building the union and doing the work to build the union. Your natural leaders are something you should have a tag for, because your natural leader in the shop might not be a one, you know, someone that has a ton of sway and we all know what I mean by that, I think. But it's like when you have someone that's a natural leader, you should tag them as natural leader. They may be a 4. That's not a good thing. You might want to know, let me filter my natural leaders to see how we're looking here. So that's one thing. And then the 2s are people that support, but I like to do it. It's someone that supports that has been to meetings. You know, they've shown and demonstrated that they do support, and they don't just like, oh, well, you know, Joe supports the union. Sure. Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. You know, actions speak louder than words, right? And we know if we're going to assess something properly, that's how we do it. The 3s are the unassessed, right? Or not unassessed. 3s are, at least how we do it, is someone that we're not sure how they're going to stand. 4s are anti. 5, someone that's going to work just like our committee to keep the union out. And then you create tags, right? So you can create an assessment tag, just like I created a vote assessment tag. And you can call it whatever you want, which is the beauty of Action Builder. And so for the nuances of like leader, or if you want to capture someone that, you know, a natural leader in the shop, or if you want to capture someone that, for example, if you choose to have a rating system where your 1s are just, you know, leaders, but not necessarily a core committee, you could do that. But then you could have a tag that has core committee. And I've seen some organizers, even though I recommend against it, have tried to do that on our campaigns. Right. And so with workers, it's a little challenging. So if you have workers, you really got to pick the right people that are going to be, if they're going to be seeing these ratings and everything, and you can filter to what they can and can't see. You can give workers task assignments. They only see their tasks, but they're still going to see the ratings. And so you really have to talk to workers, you know, and explain to them, in my experience, like these ratings are hard. They're hard for a reason, because we have experience running and winning campaigns. You have experience with work. Here's this happy marriage called building the union at your workplace, right? But we have the experience to at least explain why we rate hard. You might get, which we've gotten, we have an underground campaign right now where we have 3 workers that are tasked to work in Action Builder as activists. But they had, well, this person definitely supports the union. Why are they a 3? And it's like, this is just for us to understand how the numbers look. You have to understand, it doesn't mean that a worker is against the union or they're undecided, but this is how we're rating it now. So if there's a lot of sensitivity to having workers see this information, in my opinion. And if you're going to do it, you have to do it right. And you have to let workers know that sometimes you're just being hard. You know, don't go back and tell Johnny we rated him as a 3. We're still working on it. You know, that kind of stuff in a real way. That's all I have to say for that.
Yeah, Jennifer, how do you all use assessments on the P&I side?
So we just have the 1 to 4 assessment. We do have some organizers that do want to have like a specific volunteer organizing committee tag, where before when we rolled out, essentially a 1 was a VOC. So it kind of depends on the person. And that's why I always like basically emphasize it's customizable based on what works like for you. And even when I try to, explain the campaigns, like I just tell them like, how does your brain see it? Because we're going to set up to where it's going to work for your brain. Your brain might work different than someone else's. But, our default is basically the 1 to 4 assessment scale. And again, that's even any affiliate or organization could choose to set up that scale different ways, different colors, different numbers. But that's how we have our setup.
Awesome. I would love to hear from all of you. If you could just say, when you're doing an introduction to Action Builder for an organizer who's never seen it before, what is a feature that you have seen their eyes light up the most? And we might all come up with the same features, but maybe not. So Jen, if you want to start, and then we'll do a quick round the horn.
For me, I would say when they see the graph data, it's pretty like mind blowing, to see the percentage, to see their support, to see where they don't have members is like kind of the come to Jesus moment, if you will, of like, wow. And I can see this in any other way I want. Because it's an eye opener too. If you don't know your numbers, then yeah, that's a big red flag. You don't know how to improve if you don't know your baseline. So I would say that's kind of been the biggest thing that I see people love.
Awesome. Brienne, what have you seen in your experience?
I actually just did a train the trainer of several of our farm worker organizers yesterday and introduced them to the optimized driving route function and tasks. And I wish it was something like chart view, I wish it was the task itself, but that is the coolest thing to them. Action Builder can, once you draw out a map of what workers you want to target for house visits, for instance, you can then, once you assign that task, on the organizer side, you can set an optimized driving route, and that to them, just that blew their minds.
Yeah, that's going to save them hours potentially of just like annoyance. So that's awesome. Adam, what's the one for you?
Nothing to add. It's both of those.
Nice. I love it. I think we might have another in the chat. Oh, good. We got some more thank yous. Plug for day 2 tomorrow, where we're really going to dig in. I think that's just about it in terms of the Q&A. Wrapping up right on time here. So appreciate you all for joining us for this panel. Adam, Brienne, Jennifer, Adrian, who had to leave us. Thank you. And thank you for everybody who's attended this awesome first day of Build Power 2021, our inaugural convening about Action Builder and the power of organizing. So really appreciate you all and have an awesome evening. Thank you.